A film about control lost control before the first wide audience could judge it. Don't worry. Darling was sold as a polished thriller with a feminist edge. Florence Pugh trapped inside a beautiful lie, Olivia Wilde directing the illusion, Harry Styles bringing a fan base large enough to turn every gesture into evidence, and Warner Brothers trying to keep the campaign focused on the film. Then the rollout started feeding the wrong story. Online, Pugh's missing press conference began to matter more than the plot. Miss Flo traveled faster than the trailer. Shia LaBeouf's disputed exit complicated the official version. Hollywood wanted to sell a movie about suspicion. It accidentally trained the audience to suspect the campaign itself. The studio released a film. The internet released an investigation. So who controlled Don't Worry, Darling in the end? The director, the studio, the cast, or the internet that turned the rollout into the real thriller? The movie asked audiences to distrust a perfect image. That was the clean promise inside Don't Worry, Darling before the press tour became its own puzzle. The film was built around a beautiful surface that looked too managed to be innocent. Victory had perfect lawns, polished cars, bright clothes, neat kitchens, and husbands leaving each morning for work nobody could fully explain. The women smiled from doorways. The streets looked calm. The sunlight made the whole place feel expensive and wrong. That was the hook of the film itself. Comfort was the trap. Alice was not placed in a dark alley or a haunted house. She was placed inside a life that looked desirable from a distance. The danger did not arrive through shadows first. It arrived through routine, dinner parties, rules, smiles that lasted too long, men who spoke with confidence, women who were expected to treat the cage as a gift because the cage had been decorated well. That idea gave the movie a strong sales angle. Don't worry. Darling could be marketed as a sleek psychological thriller with a retro look and a modern point. It was about a woman slowly realizing that the life around her might be built on a lie. Viewers were invited to study every cheerful surface and ask who benefited from keeping it intact. The movie wanted suspicion. It wanted the audience to look past beauty and ask what had been hidden behind it. That message also shaped Olivia Wilde's public image around the project. After Booksmart, this was not just another directing job. It was a test of scale. She was moving from a praised smaller film into a studio thriller with bigger stars, heavier scrutiny, and a message that could be sold as stylish, sharp, and socially aware. Wilde was not only directing the movie, she was part of the promise being sold with it. In interviews and coverage, the project carried the image of a female-led thriller made with intention. Wilde was positioned as a director handling power, gender, and control from behind the camera, while the film explored those same ideas on screen. That gave the campaign extra weight. It was not only selling a plot, it was selling a mood, a message, and the idea of a filmmaker in command of a difficult machine. That kind of image can be useful, but it is fragile. When a campaign is built around control, care, and clean intention, every crack sounds louder. The audience has already been trained by the film to distrust a perfect surface. Once that training turns toward the press tour, normal publicity begins to look like evidence. A careful answer can sound rehearsed. A missing appearance can become a clue. A smile can be slowed down and treated like testimony. That was the danger sitting under the campaign from the beginning. In the film, Florence Pugh's Alice starts to doubt the story handed to her. She notices pressure behind the calm. She reads the room differently from everyone around her. Outside the film, audiences would soon begin doing the same thing to the rollout. They would watch interviews, red carpets, seating charts, and silences as if the real plot had escaped the screen. That does not mean every online theory was true. It does not mean every cold glance had meaning. But the setup was unstable. A movie about suspicion was being promoted by a campaign that needed public trust. A film about a polished lie was being sold through polished answers. The contradiction was already there. All it needed was pressure. To understand why that pressure turned into a reputation war, the cast map matters. This was not a simple case of one star and one director. Florence Pugh brought prestige. Olivia Wilde brought authorship. Harry Styles brought a fan base big enough to turn small moments into global clips. Shia LaBeouf brought a disputed exit that would not stay quiet. Warner Brothers brought money, release strategy, and the need to keep attention pointed at the film instead of the noise around it. From a distance, the package looked strong. Up close, it was volatile. Each person carried value, but each value came with risk. Pugh gave the film emotional authority. Wilde had to prove she could hold a larger studio project together. Styles made the movie impossible to ignore, but also harder to control. LaBeouf's departure left a loose thread. The studio needed a clean rollout for a film about hidden rot. That was the problem. The campaign looked polished, but the pressure points were already in place. The first real crack came through restraint. Florence Pugh did not need to accuse anyone. She did not need to sit for a long interview or narrate the temperature of the set. What made people lean in was quieter than that. The lead actress of the film gave the project less visible promotion than people expected from the face of its story. That distance could have ordinary explanations. Actors have schedules. Publicity plans shift. Studios decide where to spend attention. None of that proves conflict by itself, but publicity runs on signals as much as proof. When the star at the emotional center of a watched movie appears reserved, the reservation becomes material. The internet does not leave a gap empty. It fills it. Pugh's limited promotion worked because it gave the public almost nothing direct to attack. If she had spoken sharply, every sentence could have been clipped and used against her. By saying little, she stayed above the mess. The campaign needed unity. Her restraint created a space where people could read absence as meaning, even when the meaning was not confirmed. Then Venice gave that absence a stage. At the Venice press conference, Pugh was not there. The official explanation was her filming schedule on Dune, Part 2. And that point matters. A scheduling conflict is not proof of a feud. It is not a confession. It is not a verdict. But in a campaign already being watched with suspicion, the explanation could not fully control the image. The image was simple and hard to ignore. A major studio film arrived at a prestigious festival. Olivia Wilde sat before reporters, carrying the job of selling the film and calming the noise around it. The cast was expected to project confidence, but the actress whose performance carried the story was absent from one of the most visible public moments of the rollout. That empty seat did not speak, but it performed. It became the cleanest symbol of a campaign that could no longer guarantee togetherness. Reporters did not need to invent the question. The room had already asked it. Was this only scheduling, or was the public watching a campaign trying to manage something deeper? Pugh did not need to give an anti-Wilde statement for the story to grow. The absence did the work. In a steadier campaign, the explanation might have ended the issue. Here, it sharpened the mystery. Social media did not treat the missing press conference only as logistics. It treated it as a clue, even when the clue was incomplete. That is what happens when trust weakens. Normal facts start to sound managed. A calendar issue becomes a coded message. A missed appearance becomes a refusal. A quiet actress becomes a witness who never takes a stand. That reading may not be fair in every detail, but reputation battles do not wait for fairness before they start moving. By saying very little, Pugh protected her own image. She avoided the trap of a public fight. She did not give the campaign a quote that could be framed as bitterness or disloyalty. Instead, she let restraint do what direct confrontation could not. It made people lean closer without giving them enough proof to tear apart. The public wrote into the silence. Some viewers read her distance as dignity. Some rated as refusal. Some rated as proof that something had gone wrong behind the scenes. None of those readings created a legal record. They created a narrative record. And in a campaign built on perception, that was enough to change the temperature. The sharper blow came from the Shia-LaBeouf dispute. Before the Venice premiere, Wilde's public account of his departure had become tied to the film's image of a protected set. She had described the decision in terms of protecting the production environment, especially Florence Pugh. That version fit the campaign's larger message: a director drawing a line, a woman in charge, a set built around care. Then LaBeouf challenged it. He denied that he had been fired. According to reports, he said he left the film because he felt there had not been enough rehearsal time. He also provided materials intended to challenge the public version of events. The story was no longer only that an actor had left and another actor had replaced him. It became a fight over who controlled the explanation. That is where the campaign took real damage. Wilde's version faced a rival timeline, and the public now had something to compare. In a normal production dispute, that might have stayed inside industry gossip. But Don't Worry Darling had already trained its audience to look for cracks. Once LaBeouf challenged the account, the language of protection itself became part of the case. Then the video arrived. It was short, plain and rough, no red carpet lighting, no polished interview chair. Olivia Wilde appeared in a phone video from inside a car, speaking directly to LaBeouf and urging him not to leave the project. The clip was reported as lasting less than a minute, but it did more damage than a longer statement could have done because it gave the public something physical to watch. The clip mattered because it seemed to complicate the public image of a director who had framed the departure through protection. Viewers could now place two versions beside each other: the clean campaign language and the private appeal that had been released into public view. Full context still mattered, but the internet rarely waits for full context when a clip is clear enough to travel. Then came the phrase that turned the dispute into shorthand. In the video, Wilde referred to Florence Pugh as Miss Flo. The phrase was small, and that made it dangerous. It did not require people to understand contracts, rehearsal schedules, or competing timelines. Two words carried the feeling of tension. To many viewers, It sounded dismissive. Whether that was Wilde's intent or not, the phrase gave the internet a handle. Miss Flo moved faster than the film's own message because it was easy to repeat. Fans used it to defend Pugh. Critics used it to question Wilde's account. Commentators used it as a shortcut for the gap between public feminist branding and reported backstage tension. Even people who had not followed the timeline understood that the phrase meant something had gone wrong. From that moment on, don't worry. Darling was not only being promoted, it was being decoded. The movie was about a woman doubting a polished world. Now the campaign itself had become a polished world people wanted to doubt. The next stage would make that decoding public, visual, and impossible to contain. Venice was waiting, and every glance there would be treated like evidence. Venice was supposed to restore control. Instead, it gave the internet sharper footage. The red carpet should have been the safest part of the campaign. Festival prestige, clean lighting, formal clothes, a famous cast, and a setting built to make movies feel serious again. Don't worry. Darling arrived with everything needed to look important. But by then, the public was not watching like a normal audience. It was watching like a jury. Every step became material. Every pause became a theory. Every seat, smile, turn of the head, and missing glance was clipped, slowed down, and pushed across social media. Florence Pugh's appearance did not end speculation. Olivia Wilde's presence did not calm it. Their distance gave viewers a new image to inspect. Venice was built to honor cinema. For this campaign, it became the clearest public stage for the scandal. The strange part was that no confirmed confrontation was needed. A lack of warmth was enough. A careful smile was enough. If someone looked away, people asked what was being avoided. If someone stood apart, the space between bodies was treated like evidence. Once the audience decided the real story was hidden inside the footage, the official image no longer belonged to the people standing inside it. Then a smaller moment swallowed the room, a short clip of Harry Styles taking his seat beside Chris Pine began spreading online. Viewers replayed it, slowed it down, zoomed in, and built the theory that Styles had spit on Pine. Pine's representative denied the rumor, calling it a complete fabrication. Later reporting treated it as unfounded. But the denial could not erase what the rumor had already revealed about the campaign. The rumor was absurd, and that was why it mattered. It was simple, visual, and easy to argue about without knowing anything about the film. A normal campaign might have killed it quickly. This campaign could not. The missing press conference, the leaked Miss Flo video, and weeks of speculation had trained viewers to treat every small gesture as part of a larger case. At Venice, the marketing became trapped inside the film's own logic. Don't Worry, Darling was about a perfect world with something wrong underneath. The campaign now looked the same to the public. People were no longer asking only what the movie meant. They were asking what everyone was hiding. Pine's expression became a meme. Styles's movement became an exhibit. Wilde's posture became a statement. Pugh's distance became a headline without words. Inside the press conference, the attempt to regain control became another clue. When a reporter tried to ask about Shia LaBeouf, the moderator blocked the question. On paper, that may have been a protective move. Press conferences are managed spaces. Festivals do not want every answer dragged into tabloid noise. Studios want the conversation returned to performances, themes, and the film itself. But in a campaign already defined by unanswered questions, blocking the question did not close the door. It pointed at the door. Viewers saw the interruption and folded it into the story. Fair or not, the campaign had reached the stage where every effort to contain the narrative looked like proof that the narrative was dangerous. Silence had become content. Evasion had become content. Control itself had become content. That is why Venice hurt more than it helped. It offered a clean stage, but beauty could not soften suspicion. The better the images looked, the harder people searched them for cracks. The more carefully everyone moved, the more that carefulness was read as confirmation that something had gone wrong. By the end of the festival moment, the film's promotional promise had been replaced by a stranger question. Was the public watching a cast promote a thriller or watching a thriller escape the film and take over the campaign? The PR machine still had one job: sell the movie. But by the time Don't Worry, Darling reached the public, the internet had found a better product. It was not the plot. It was the rollout falling apart while everyone on camera behaved as if the rollout was still under control. A normal campaign gives the audience clean material: trailers, interviews, festival clips, red carpet photos, safe compliments. This campaign gave them gaps. Florence Pugh said very little. Olivia Wilde had to answer too much. Every silence looked planned, and every explanation looked like repair work. That was perfect material for tabloid media. A tabloid does not need a full answer. It needs a question sharp enough to print again tomorrow. Did the lead actress distance herself? Did the director lose control of the room? Was the press tour selling the film or hiding the fracture? Each headline kept the story alive. Social media made the cycle faster. A clip could be cut into 10 seconds. A smile could be frozen. A glance could be circled. A seating chart could be treated like a confession. TikTok did not need a confirmed feud. Reddit did not need a complete timeline. YouTube did not need proof of every rumor. The content was the search for proof itself. That is how avoidance became headline material. Pugh's limited promotion became a message people wrote for her. Wilde's attempts to redirect attention became evidence that there was something to redirect away from. The less the campaign answered, the more the audience filled in. The movie asked people to distrust a perfect image. The marketing trained them to distrust its own. Then Harry Styles changed the size of the room. He did not need to create disorder to intensify it. His presence made every moment louder. A psychological thriller with a respected actress and a director under pressure is already a difficult campaign. Add one of the most watched pop stars in the world, and the scale changes instantly. Every arrival becomes an event. Every joke becomes a clip. Every awkward pause becomes a theory. His fandom brought visibility, but visibility is not control. It can push a trailer. It can fill timelines. It can put the film in front of people who might never have cared about a studio thriller. But it also brings a microscope. The attention around Styles did not stay neatly on the movie. It spread across his relationship with Wilde, his acting, his interviews, and his body language. That attention worked like fuel on dry ground. One fan account posted a clip. Another slowed it down. Another defended him. Another attacked the defense. Then people outside the fandom joined because the argument was easy to understand. You did not need to know the film's themes, you only needed to know that something looked off. The noise around the red carpet drowned out quieter questions about filmmaking. The project had been sold as a tense story about control, desire, and a closed world. But the scale of Stiles' fame pulled the conversation toward personality. Who stood beside whom? Who looked tired? Who looked annoyed? Who smiled too late? The campaign became a machine that turned small gestures into public material. That is why the attention became a double-edged weapon. Stiles made the film impossible to ignore. He also made it harder to discuss calmly. The studio gained noise, but noise does not always help a movie. Sometimes it buries the movie under the people promoting it. Olivia Wilde tried to bring the conversation back to the work. She praised Florence Pugh. She pushed against what she called tabloid noise. She tried to hold the position every director needs during a difficult campaign. Calm, proud, focused, still in command. But the audience had stopped treating her answers as answers. They treated them as part of the case. That is a brutal position for a director. If Wilde ignored the rumors, people read silence as confirmation. If she addressed them, people read the answer as damage control. If she praised Pugh, viewers asked why the praise felt necessary. If she blamed the noise became the headline again. Once a campaign enters that loop, ordinary publicity stops working. The more the campaign said focus on the work, the more the public focused on everything except the work. That failure was not only personal, it was mechanical. Once tabloids, social platforms, fandom accounts, and festival coverage began feeding the same story, no single interview could pull it back. The PR battle ended with the movie visible, but the narrative warped. Don't Worry, Darling was not buried by silence. It was buried by attention pointed in the wrong direction. The disaster did not destroy the box office. It damaged reputation, control, and the right to be remembered for the film itself. Florence Pugh appeared to protect herself by saying very little. From the outside, that looked like a win, because public sympathy moved toward her. She did not need a long interview, a complaint, or a dramatic statement. Her limited promotion became the story, and the story worked in her favor because silence felt cleaner than explanation. But silence still has a cost. Pugh's name moved through a flood of posts, reactions, and theory threads, while very few of the sentences attached to her were actually hers. She became a symbol of restraint, resistance, and quiet judgment in a narrative she almost never narrated for herself. That is not the same as control. Before the rollout broke open, the clean version was simple. Florence Pugh leads a stylish psychological thriller. After the campaign turned into public theater, the sentence changed. It became, Florence Pugh's silence says everything. That shift protected her reputation, but it also pulled attention away from her performance. Her acting became surrounded by questions about what she refused to say. That is the strange damage of being publicly defended without speaking. The audience can turn you into the hero of a story you did not ask to lead. They can protect your image and still take away your voice. Pugh may have survived the campaign better than anyone else, but she did not escape the machine. She was turned into evidence. For Olivia Wilde, the damage was sharper because her role carried authority. She was not only an actor in the film, she was the director, the public face of the project, and the person expected to stand calmly in the center while the campaign burned around her. Every answer she gave was judged as leadership. Every hesitation was treated as weakness. The criticism was not only about whether the film worked, it became a question about control. Could Wilde control the set? Could she control the cast narrative? Could she control the press room? Could she control the story around a movie that was itself about control? The comparison was unforgiving because a director's public image depends on command. Her career was not erased. That would be too simple, and it would not be accurate. But her leadership brand took damage. She entered the project as a filmmaker trying to prove she could move from Booksmart into a bigger studio thriller. She came in with authorship, ambition, and something to prove. By the end of the campaign, many people were not discussing her direction. They were discussing whether the campaign had slipped out of her hands. That damage does not always show up as a canceled job. It shows up in the next room when people wonder whether the noise follows you. It shows up when a director's name becomes linked not only to the movie, but to the question of whether the room was steady under her watch. There is also a gendered edge. Hollywood has often been more willing to frame male directors with chaotic histories as complicated, intense, or brilliant. Wilde was more easily turned into the face of disorder. That does not make every criticism unfair. It does mean the public trial around her carried an extra appetite for humiliation. Harry Styles moved through the storm differently. He was not the moral center. He was the attention bomb. His presence made the film louder before anyone could judge whether that noise would help. He brought an audience, endless clips, fan defense, fan attack, and a scale the studio could not simply purchase. But visibility is not the same as control. Styles made every moment bigger, yet he did not carry the same burden of explanation. When the campaign became chaotic, the scrutiny around him often turned into memes instead of lasting professional judgment. His awkward lines, red carpet gestures, and viral moments fed the cycle, but they did not attach to him in the same way they attached to Wilde. That was the imbalance. Florence was read by many viewers as the silent professional. Olivia became to many online viewers the director losing the room. Harry became the spectacle moving through the room without taking the same wound from it. By the end, there was no clean winner. Pugh kept public respect but lost the right for her performance to be discussed without the shadow of silence. Wilde kept the film and the credit, but lost control of the leadership image she needed most. Styles kept visibility, but his visibility helped distort the campaign around everyone else. The actors had finished their roles on screen. Then the campaign gave them new roles off screen, and the audience accepted those roles before the film could defend itself. The largest casualty was waiting outside this ledger, the work they were paid to make, a film beginning to sink under its own marketing. The cruel part of Hollywood is that audiences can dislike the story around your film and still pay to watch it collapse. Don't Worry, Darling was not ignored. That was never the problem. The film opened with enough force to prove that the campaign had done one thing well. It made people look. Reports placed its domestic opening near $19 million, with its worldwide opening around $30 million. Its domestic total later reached around $45 million, and its worldwide total passed $87 million. Those numbers matter because they stop the easy argument. This was not a film that vanished at the box office. The scandal sold curiosity. People bought tickets partly because the noise had become impossible to avoid. Some wanted to see the film. Others wanted to inspect the evidence they had already been handed online. Was the tension visible on screen? Did the story explain the strange energy around the cast? Did the movie feel like the center of the campaign, or only the excuse for it? That is the trap. Attention can look like success until it starts feeding on the thing it was supposed to protect. Don't worry. Darling survived commercially, but that survival came with scratches. The numbers proved people showed up. They did not prove the film controlled why they showed up. The biggest wound was not box office failure. It was narrative burial. By the time many viewers entered the theater, the movie had already been surrounded by another movie, built from Venice clips, interviews, rumors, facial expressions, seating arrangements, and the phrase Miss Flo. That second movie was easier to consume. It had heroes, these villains, silence, memes, and no need for a 2-hour commitment. The actual film became harder to see clearly. Reviews were no longer floating in clean air. Every discussion of performance, direction, tone, and story had to push through the campaign first. Florence Pugh's acting was discussed, but often through the frame of her public distance. Olivia Wilde's direction was discussed, but often through the frame of whether she had lost control of the room. Harry Styles' performance was discussed, but often through the noise of his fandom and the viral moments around him. The work became a footnote to its own rollout. That is narrative burial. It does not mean no one watches the film. It means public memory files the film under the scandal before it files it under cinema. People remembered the press conference before they remembered the plot. They remembered who was missing before they remembered what Alice discovered. They remembered online theories before they remembered the Victory Project. The irony is that Don't Worry, Darling was built for a cleaner kind of suspicion. On screen, Alice lives inside a polished world that asks women to smile, obey, and stop asking questions. The suburb is bright. The clothes are controlled. The men speak with confidence. The women are expected to perform calm while something underneath the surface feels wrong. Then the promotion created its own version of that discomfort. The cast stood in beautiful clothes. The red carpet looked expensive. The answers sounded careful. Everyone was supposed to smile through a campaign that had already cracked in public. The movie asked viewers to distrust a perfect image, and the press tour gave them another perfect image to distrust. That reflection was almost too exact. A film about control lost control of its story. A film about women trapped inside a managed illusion became surrounded by real questions about which women were speaking, which women were silent, and which version of events the public was being asked to accept. The marketing did not just sell the film. It accidentally exposed the same pressure the film was trying to dramatize. But the danger in that irony is that it became more interesting than the screenplay. Audiences did not need to understand the Victory Project when the real campaign had already given them a mystery with easier clues. A missed press conference was simpler than a plot twist. A viral phrase was sharper than a theme. A red carpet glance was faster than a character arc. That is how a film gets buried while still making money. It remains visible, but the wrong parts become visible. The studio can point to ticket sales. The press can point to engagement. Fans can point to clips. But the movie itself sits underneath all of it, still trying to be judged as a thriller after the audience has already turned its release into a trial. The illusion finally broke, leaving a colder reality no press strategy could fully repair. Once a movie loses control of the reason people remember it, the damage does not end when the opening weekend closes. In this war, the enemy was not one actor, one director, or one red carpet moment. The enemy was the empty space between what the campaign wanted people to believe and what the public thought it could see. Once that space opened, social media walked in and took the chair. The studio could still release trailers. The cast could still smile for cameras. The festival could still place everyone under bright lights. But the story no longer belonged to the people paid to sell the film. A blank answer became material. A missing press appearance became evidence. A careful smile became a theory. A short clip became stronger than a press release. That is the brutal rule of modern publicity. When official language leaves a gap, the crowd does not wait for context. It writes the missing scene itself. By then, Don't Worry, Darling had lost the most important kind of control. It had not lost visibility. It had lost authorship over its own meaning. The public was no longer asking only what the Victory Project meant. It was asking who was avoiding whom, who had the cleaner image, who looked trapped, and who seemed to be winning the silence. A PR campaign is supposed to build anticipation. This one built an alternate movie. The thriller on screen became smaller than the thriller outside the theater because the outside story was easier to follow, easier to share, and easier to judge. That is the verdict. Hollywood can sell a perfect image, but it cannot control what happens once that image starts contradicting itself. The most dangerous weapon was not the rumor. It was the break between the image the campaign wanted and the image the audience believed it saw. Don't Worry, Darling asked audiences to distrust a polished world built on control. Then its own rollout taught them to distrust polished answers, staged unity, and public smiles. And once the crowd becomes the director of the story, the studio can still buy the spotlight, but it cannot decide what the spotlight reveals. The cost of losing control is permanent now. The movie remains, but the version people remember may no longer belong to the people who made it. A movie about a fake perfect world was undercut by its own perfect campaign. By the time the theater doors closed, the loudest thriller had already played outside them. In missing answers, clipped smiles, red carpet distance, and a crowd writing its own version of the truth, Don't Worry. Darling did not lose attention. It lost control of what attention meant. Hollywood can sell an image, but once the audience starts directing the gaps, PR becomes the story. If this case changed how you see the film, leave your take below. Like the video, subscribe to Reputation Wars, and stay with us for the next Hollywood File.